Pro volleyball in the United States is alive and well, and it is thriving in big part because of my guest today, Jen Spicher. She is CEO of Pro Volleyball Federation, and it is taking the United States by storm right now. Their inaugural season is up and running. We're going to talk about the league. We're going to talk about Jen as far as her story. And this is the Honest Something podcast. I'm Bryan Fenley, a volleyball broadcaster for ESPN. And Jen, I am so excited. First of all, I'm pumped for you all to see the early reception of the league and where it's going. So I'm thrilled to have you. Thanks so much for joining me.
Oh, thank you, Brian, for having me on. I appreciate it. And yeah, it's been a couple of great, fantastic 10 days, I would say.
Many more great days to come in the
That's
future.
correct.
10 good days and countless more of good days to happen in your future and in the league's future. And I can't help but think, as we get this conversation underway, that you as a player at Wayne State, now that you're on the executive side, when do you find in your daily operation and running of the league that you go back and get nostalgic and think about your own playing days?
I don't have too much time to think about that. I loved the game. When I got out, I didn't go to Europe. I wasn't quite that good, but I did end up, running in the beer leagues and setting for a men's team for a number of years, and that was fun. And I had the chance to play every position. My freshman year, I was middle blocker. My second year, I was right side. My third year, I was left side. My fourth year, I went back to middle, and then, like I said, I set for some men's teams. So I was able to play a lot of different opportunities. And I mean, we're doing this for these athletes, period. Full stop. I mean, they deserve it. They're so good at what they do. I mean, I don't know if you saw last night's match, but Leah Edmond lit it up. I mean, the girl's having a moment. And, so did many other players. And it's been a really fun thing to do. It's been a lot of hard work, a lot of tireless hours by a lot of people that work with me and for me and that I work for and but it's been great.
Being great in the fact that as this league has been going and going up and running, the fact is you've had consecutive home matches to start in season openers in different states. And you're at like all of these. How do you pull this off? Only like
Well,
Jen Spicher can.
you pray a lot because when you live in Detroit and you have to go to Omaha and then you have to go to Grand Rapids and there's a connector and then you have to go from Grand Rapids through Detroit to Orlando and you have one flight to get there in time. You pray. And so, you pray for good weather. And luckily last week we had it. I will tell you, I got to Detroit on my fifth of six legs going into Orlando. And I landed in Detroit at like 7 in the morning. I was up at 4 a.m. And as Logan Tom said, Jen, you can sleep when you're dead. Just get there. And I got to the Delta Sky Club and I was 5 minutes from boarding and they're like, "Oh, your flight's delayed. It's mechanical issues for 3 hours." So I literally got on the phone with Delta and I go, "Find me another way. I'm in Detroit. There are 72 flights to Atlanta. Get me to the ATL." And they're like, "Oh no, all those are full." I go, "Well, there must be some city." And so she actually ended up flying me through Raleigh, Durham into Orlando. I landed at 2 about 3 hours later, but I made the game. And that's all that matters.
That vignette that you just told me, I feel like that echoes your drive in the way that you conduct your business. And the fact is, you have a vision and it's going to happen no matter what. Whatever it takes, you're going to do it despite the obstacles. Where did you develop that strong will?
Yeah, that's kind of my MO, and anybody that's worked for me or worked with me knows how driven I am, how dedicated I am to what I'm doing, especially when I love what I'm doing. But I grew up on a farm, Brian. I grew up with 150 acres and riding horses and 80 cattle in the backyard, and I get up at 5 a.m. and I would have the horse barn, and my brother would take care of the cattle, and we'd go to school. And my freshman year of high school, my parents split. And I went to a high school that was on track for a state championship, and my mom moved out of the district. And I wanted a full ride scholarship, and I wasn't going to get it going to this other school. And so we made a deal with the school that as long as I stayed with my dad 3 days a week, my mom and I commuted, and my mother drove me an hour every morning and every night to go to the high school that I was going to for the next two and a half years, so that I could continue on with my volleyball career there. We ended up winning a state title my sophomore year. I was a sophomore. I served the winning point, and that was quite a moment. And then the next 2 years, I was all state. Ended up going to Wayne State University in Detroit, and it paid off. I paid for my schooling, and I had a couple of jobs at Wayne State. One of them was a secretary in the football office, and that's where I met Dave Winham. My senior year, Dave Winham was the defensive coordinator at Wayne State football, and I was the assistant in the football office, making some extra, as I call it, day drinking money. And he and I met, and 35 years later, he called me and wanted me to take this job.
To think about your childhood and that really fascinating upbringing and the fact that you grew up on a farm, when you are so in touch with nature at that young age, how does that sort of supplement your worldview in what you're looking for in life and where you're going and what you want and what you want to make out of it?
Well, first of all, it teaches you hard work. It teaches you work ethic. And I don't know if you know this, Brian, but my dad was a professional football player, and my mom raised three children on a farm with over 100 animals. And she was by herself 5 months of the year. And so, she leaned on my brother and myself pretty hard, and we certainly came to and helped her. But that's the work ethic part. That's where I got that, was from her, as is her drive and her ambition. And you know, my interest in making sure that they were proud of me.
That feeling of pride, that feeling of validation, I would think growing up was a big part of your competitive instincts and where you are. And when you think about the sacrifices that your mom made for you to get to that 1 hour drive and every day or whatever it took to get to volleyball practice, when you think about that indispensable love between you and your mom, how much of it is what you've become today and understanding what love is and how you're giving it now to so many people, whether it's your family, those you work with in the league, and really understanding what that is all about?
Well, it's 100%, her fault. It's her fault. She and I spent hours in the car, and we would talk the whole time. There wasn't phones. I didn't have a cell phone. I didn't have my fingers, on a device. We would talk, and most of the time I was driving because I was a student driver. So look at all those great hours I got student driving from, the middle of nowhere, Chelsea, Michigan, to Saline. But at the end of the day, everything that I am is because of the family that I have and the people around me. Certainly, my desire to win. I think that people will tell you that know me well. You won't find a more competitive individual at anything, whether it's golf, euchre, darts, pool, nothing. And I love to compete and I love to win.
When you were young and you were on those long car rides with your mom, what were you all talking about? What were you learning from her?
Oh wow. I mean, I learned everything from her. Integrity. I will say this. I learned a lot from my dad too. My dad said, do what you say you're gonna do. That was the one thing he always said. Do what you say you're gonna do, because your word is everything. And so, as you know, as soon as we announced, Pro Volleyball Federation, what was an opportunity now became our responsibility. And that is what drives us in the league every day, is to bring this to fruition for these phenomenal athletes.
And with that responsibility comes a seriousness in the execution of it, which you all are doing. But when does Jen Spiker allow herself to get laid back a little bit with everything you're doing? When do you get that opportunity to sit back, relax, if that's even possible?
Well, I can't lie, because those that know me well know there might be a little bit of Chardonnay in the evenings involved. Just a little bit.
Just a little bit. So
Just a little
that
bit, but I do like to play golf. Of course, in Michigan, you can't, right now, at least not right now. But I don't get to play a lot of golf these days either, because, you're constantly running and gunning, and as you know, we've already announced 3 teams for next year, so we're birthing new babies, if you will, and getting them moving, and head coaches are getting signed, and, I've already started the recruiting trail for 2025 and speaking to the top 60 women that are in Europe. And so we're doing that right now. And once that product hit, right? Once we all knew what we had, we all at the league level knew what special product we had that was going to hit on January 24th at 7 p.m. Central Time in Omaha. We knew, and it did not disappoint. It did not disappoint. The first 3 matches, we had just under 25,000 in paid attendance. We had over 270,000 unique views on YouTube. I think as of Monday, 5 p.m. It's going, and it's really special.
Well, under your tutelage, everything is certainly special in the way that you not only have helped form this league, but you think about all the success that you've had before that as well from a business standpoint. And you look at your past and how much of it from an analytical and business standpoint do you see even today working in sports and working in the field of professional volleyball, where that hard work and determination that you picked up from your younger self in your line of work, post playing volleyball yourself, that you now use here and you find very helpful?
Well, as my old job as a chief revenue officer for a global staffing company, and my prior roles, every single one of those roles, Brian, I was building. I was building a team. I was building a culture. I was building something around me. And my last 3 roles, I left Kelly Services after building. I think we went from 2 billion in sales to 8 billion in sales. Um, um, I left there to build a sales and marketing team. I went to a company that had one sales and marketing person, and it was me. And I built that. And so I hired 5. I hired a marketing group. I spent 2.5 years with them. Obviously, it's easy to double sales when you don't have any salespeople. And then I left that company and I went to my most recent company. And again, I took over for a gentleman that has privately owned firm, and he was the only salesperson, and he wanted to, quadruple his growth and sell. And so I came in, and I had one marketing person, one. And I went with what I knew, and I went with people, process, and technology, and I built out a sales and marketing function. And we had 15, I think, when I left. We had gone into Europe, we'd gone into Canada, we were going into Latin America and South Africa, and then I got the phone call. I got the phone call from Dave, and I was not planning to leave an industry that I'd spent 30 years working in and was doing very, very well in. And but my love of volleyball, my love of mentoring women in business, my love of just growing, and certainly, I know, not firsthand, but my best girlfriend left college and went to Germany for a couple years, and she would call me. Granted, it was many, many years ago, but she would call me, and she would, be in tears about being there and being so dissatisfied. And that very girlfriend, just so you know, I'll be staying with her in Vegas when we go out and watch the Vegas Thrill play their first match on their home opener.
It's amazing the way in which, and then you described how long ago you first met Dave, and these relationships, they continue to come full circle. You've got a great team with the league. You also did have a great team at home as a
I do.
mom, as a
I do.
wife. What is that
Yeah.
like?
Well, my husband makes me laugh every single day. We've been together for 29 years, married for 25 this year in October.
Congrats to
Uh,
you.
Thank you. We've got 2 kids, Brock and Bryn. My daughter obviously played high school volleyball. I was her coach for her club. But I traveled a lot. I mean, when they were 3 and 4, my husband had a liquor store, fine wine store, and I was starting to, hockey stick. My career was starting to go up, and he was starting to yell at little kids bringing in bottles for their bottle refund because they didn't buy the pop from him. And I said, you know what, honey? You either need to work on your customer service skills or it's time to sell. And so we ended up selling the store, and we made a very important family decision. And that was he stayed home. And he is a phenomenal father. Our children are 21 and 20. I've got a senior and a sophomore. They're both 4.0s. I have no idea where that came from because it wasn't us. No. Straight start, maybe. Book smart, no. But they're both excelling. One's a mechanical engineer, the other one's pre-vet. And are you ready for this? And
I'm
I'm
ready.
not lying. They have never had an argument. Our children have never fought. They've
Not
never raised their
once.
voice to each other, not once,
So
not
where do
one
you think
time.
that comes from? Because you have to
Him
take
and
some
I,
credit for that.
him and I understand how to parent. We're together. There's no asking dad and going to mom. There's none of that. None of that. Right. And I mean, they know that and I think they respect us, and they respect our relationship. We've shown them, what, true love in a relationship and true respect and understanding is, and that's, I would never, disagree with him in front of them. But we joke all the time but having that person that I could literally, and I was traveling at Kelly, I was traveling 3, 4 times a month, 3, 4 weeks a month. I mean, if I was home, it was a big deal. And so, COVID happened. And I got to tell you, Brian, that was probably the best thing that ever happened to my family because my son was a senior and my daughter was a sophomore. And imagine being, 16 and being with two guys all the time, and your mom's gone all the time. I was gone all the time. And so, boy, it was nice to really be home, and we spent a lot of time together.
What
And
did you
she and I, because of that, both of them have gotten much closer. But I credit him with how our children were raised and how studious they are and how they're just buttoned up. I mean, they get their stuff done and they know when they have to work and they know when it's okay to play.
What was that quality time like and those experiences that when you were traveling, you weren't able to have with your daughter that you got to have when you were together?
Well, I started coaching her team. And so you got rides in the car. Sound familiar? You got a lot of time in the car. She just has they both have an awful lot of respect for both of us, and that's very great. And like you said, though, respect isn't always just given; it's earned. We have a couple of side by sides, and they go with us, and we have a blast on those. And we used to snowmobile. I'd much rather side by side. And it's just the family time. COVID, we were up north the whole time. My dad has a cabin up there, and we spent quite a bit of time up there. We took the four-wheelers and the dogs, and we were there for sometimes 2, 3, 4 weeks.
So you driving on a four wheeler, like what does that image look like? Because I want to know what that's like when you're out there and you're not doing flips, but are you going off jumps? Like how adventurous are you?
Well, these are side by sides, and if you've ever been to Winrock or Brimley or the Hatfields and the McCoys, which are big, huge, boulderous, hills and mountains in Tennessee, I'm the only female on the couples trip that drives. I'll tell you that.
What
He
is that?
gets he gets the first 4 hours, and then I get the rest of the time.
You driving, what does that suggest about you as a whole, as a person, and what you stand for and what you're all about?
Well, I'm all about empowering women. I'm all about making sure that, we can do whatever they can do, and I certainly can, and so can these ladies, and that's what this is all about.
How much of yourself do you notice in your daughter?
Oh, shoot. She is wow, she's way more independent and strong than I was at that age. She doesn't care what anybody thinks about her, and I really care. Probably way too much. She's very, very grounded in who she is and what she wants to be, and so is he for that matter, our son. But yeah, I see a lot of her. She's a mini me. She looks a lot like I do. She looks a lot like her mom. He does too, but I got 2 towheads, blondes and blue-eyed, so there you go. But, she's something special. They both are.
How about the way you were special on the volleyball court as a player and the way she has been special on the volleyball court? How would you rate the way in which, because you coached her and you obviously were a great player. So being able to watch her play, you mentioned from a relationship standpoint, how her traits and your traits are parallel, but how parallel are they on the volleyball court?
Well, she's a very calm player, and she's got a lot of power. As her old coach would say, she's got shoulders for days. Um, she's got a lot of power, and, we were both middles, and, she had a cut shot back to the left, that I taught her that I had as well. She had pretty impeccable timing of being able to read the court and know when to tip, and specifically know when to put it, like, right behind the blocker in the 4 spot. And, by the way, she's ambidextrous. She can tip left-handed.
How did she
She
work?
could hit left-handed. So when the set goes over her, she literally just switches and hits left-handed. I've never seen it in any player.
Is it natural, or is this something that she worked on over time?
I actually think she was born a lefty and for whatever reason did everything right-handed because her footwork was always off too.
So
We had to
there's the
work on her we had to
yeah.
work on her footwork forever.
What's the dynamic like as you being a mom and a coach of your daughter? Like, how much do you feel like, oh, I'm playing mom role when I'm supposed to be a coach, and then I'm a coach, and maybe I should off the court, I should be more of like a mom. Like the intersection of both. How could they get blurred, or what would that have looked like? The dynamic when you were coaching and your daughter.
You know what? She was just one of the players.
Yeah.
I mean, I didn't treat her any differently. I mean, when she had to s well, she didn't really get to sit much because it was club and, that we'd only carry a couple middles, right? Nobody wants to play middle in club. So but no, she took the direction, she understood the difference, and, I was lucky enough that, there were probably a group of 6 or 7 girls that they wanted to stay together. They'd been together, they were on a team when they were 12, and then they were kind of in the same area or gym when they were 13, and then at 14, they kinda came back together and had a horrible coach, and then it was at 15 when I took them back over, and we moved clubs, and I asked all the parents. I had really good parents. And Brian, that the parents are they're gonna drive you out first
Yes.
before the kids. And I had really good parents that never said a word. Coach Jen knows what she's doing. They would tell their daughters. There was never anybody complaining about anything. I had a couple of toots here and there, attitudes
It's
here and there
normal.
with players,
Yeah.
but yeah, at the end of the day, this same group of girls were always they stuck with me, and one of them, just to give you some perseverance, and I just saw her. She was at the Grand Rapids match. I invited them to come, but this young lady, she was my DS, and she was blind in one eye. And so whenever I coached, we would have to get the side that faced the wall so she could pick the ball up off the wall. So, but that's perseverance, right? That's taking a kid who you probably could have cut, right? For somebody that could maybe, have a little bit better passing efficiency, but we kept her because she was part of our family.
And that family extends to the league, even to this day.
100%.
The caring that you carry from you being a coach and explaining that story, it's a business, but what one of the reasons I wanted to have you on, Jen, is because there's so much more to it than that. There's this aspect of how much you care. You mentioned this, the mentoring of women. So many people look up to you and the example that you're setting on a daily basis, and how many people you are changing the lives of. If you think about this purpose of a life that you have, I can't even put into words. I think there would be too many names to list off what brings the purpose to you, because there's so many different things that come together that give you that sense of purpose.
Well, and again, it's these ladies, it's these women, it's what we're building for them and what the future can hold for them. I've been to all 4 of the first, matches. Omaha's on Saturday. It'll be the first match that I'm not gonna go to because I need a little bit of rest. Uh, but, walking into the gym and seeing them on the floor and them look at me and I'll run over and, high five and hug and, "How are you doing?" And, I texted Allie Linehan when she went down the other day because that's important. I want her to know that we're here for her and anything that she needs. I mean, I'm sure Todd and Colleen did the same thing, but I'll never forget the time I called her. She told me no, flat up, she was done. Oh yeah, so did Reagan Pittman. And I kept at Allie and I kept at Reagan, and I think Morgan got to Allie, or maybe it was Leah Edmond, but look at her, she's a star in the league. I sent her a text after she got player of the week. I said, "You having any fun yet?" And she clearly responded with, "Yeah, this is a lot of fun."
Well, this as we wrap up this conversation, and Jen Spiker's with me, I'm Bryan Fenley. I go back to that little anecdote you said about making sure that even if when you're looking for flights, when there's a mechanical issue on a plane and you have to get somewhere, that you're just gonna get there.
Just
And
gonna get there.
you're
You
just
gotta
gonna
make it
get
happen.
there. you just make it happen. That when I met you in Tampa, and as I get to know you better now, that is what I noticed from you. And then as I hear these different stories, you're just getting things done because you're passionate and you know what you need to do and you know what it takes. And so all of these things are what I wanted to canvas and kind of put together in this metaphoric like snow globe for people to see as this season gets underway, and so many more good things in its future. Already fantastic with the reception and everything that's going on with the league. And I love what you guys are doing. And I'm so glad I had a chance to tell your story, because I know you go on a lot of interviews, but maybe, Jen, this was a little different. But I wanted people to see
It's a
this.
lot
This,
different, and I thank you for that. I
yeah,
really do, I appreciate
be,
it.
because there's such a human side to you and our stories that people want to know. Okay, what we're doing now, but there's also what we did now, and what we're doing now is a lot of it's tied to who we were when we were young. And I love kind of exploring that, to know where your roots came from the farm, and the drive and the sacrifices that you had to make to be a player, and the way that you're there for your family, and all of these good things. So I thank you so much, Jen, for being a part of this fun podcast, and I look forward to chatting with you again soon.
Thanks, Brian, appreciate you having me on. Have a great weekend.